A man's dream will never die. This has to be one of my favorite panels in the entire series. It sounds like something Luffy would say. It has the same electric conviction, the same unshakable defiance against a world full of cynics and mockers. In a bar on the lawless island of Jaya, surrounded by pirates who laugh at dreamers, one man stands up and declares that the human spirit of ambition cannot be extinguished. And it's the villain. That is the entire thesis of Marshall D. Teach, buried in plain sight, delivered before we even know his name matters. Oda introduced Blackbeard in chapter 223, a stranger eating cherry pie and laughing too loud, and made him the philosophical inverse of the protagonist without once announcing it. He didn't need to. If you were paying attention, the foundation was already there. Blackbeard is the series' most precise answer to a question Oda has been building since chapter 1. What happens when the freedom to dream has no moral anchor? Luffy's freedom creates. Blackbeard's freedom devours. And Oda spent 25 years and over 2 decades in publication, constructing a villain so patient, so structurally essential to the story's DNA, that his reveal as a serious threat felt simultaneously inevitable and completely shocking. Most villains in shonen manga want power now. They rage, they accelerate, they burn the world in their impatience. Crocodile schemed for years, but his schemes were always leaking urgency and wounded pride. Doflamingo had the stillness of a predator, but even he wore his ambition like a costume. Loud, theatrical, impossible to miss, Kaido simply smashed until something broke. Blackbeard did the opposite. He joined Whitebeard's crew as a young man and stayed there for over 2 decades. You'd think it's because he loved the crew, or Whitebeard inspired him, but no, because he was waiting for one specific devil fruit to surface, the dark fruit. He even said so himself, directly to Ace's face, without a flicker of shame that he stayed on Whitebeard's ship for decades, because he knew that was his best shot of finding that devil fruit. What kind of person is capable of that? Not ambition alone. Ambition is common. What Blackbeard has is something more unsettling, a total absence of attachment that masquerades as warmth. He laughed with his crewmates, he ate with them. He built a reputation as a cheerful, if odd, member of the family. He was Ace's subordinate, a man who carried so much love for his crew that he went to war over honor alone. And none of it meant anything to Blackbeard. The moment Thatch, the 4th Division commander and head chef of the Whitebeard pirates, found the dark fruit, Blackbeard killed him without hesitation. 26 years of patience and then immediate, cold action. Blackbeard's patience is not a virtue. It is the most terrifying expression of his nihilism. The crew was never family. It was a waiting room. This is where Oda establishes the horror at the center of his character, and it operates through contrast. Whitebeard, the man whose ship Blackbeard parasitized, structured his entire identity around chosen family. He called pirates his children. He went to war for a son who wasn't even his by blood. His power, his legend, his emotional core all pointed outward toward the people he claimed. Blackbeard lived inside that family's warmth for 2.5 decades and felt nothing. He simply used them and moved on. The horror itself isn't him murdering Thatch, it's the 26 years before it. There is one more dimension to the weight worth considering. Blackbeard is the son of Roxy Zebek, the most powerful pirate in the generation before Roger, a man so threatening that the world government erased him from history. Blackbeard was 2 years old when his father died at God Valley. He grew up orphaned and fatherless, without any knowledge of what he was heir to. Then he joined the Whitebeard pirates, unknowingly aligning himself with a man who had once sailed under his father's flag, and waited. The symbolism is almost unbearably precise here. The son of the world's most erased pirate, hiding inside the crew of the world's most beloved one. He was in the belly of history, learning how to swallow it whole. The dark fruit is a Logia-type devil fruit that allows the user to create, control, and transform into darkness at will. It is described in canon as the most evil of all devil fruits. The darkness is a void that devours and crushes everything it touches, a gravitational black hole that pulls matter into itself and can be released back outward with destructive force. What makes it unique among the Logia fruits, and what makes it philosophically essential to understanding Blackbeard, is its limitation. It does not grant immunity. Unlike other Logia users who become their element and let attacks pass through harmlessly, Blackbeard still feels every hit. The darkness takes everything in, including pain, and gives nothing back that doesn't cost something. Oda is precise here. This wasn't a coincidence nor a design flaw. The man who chose a fruit that amplifies all damage he receives is telling you something about his relationship to suffering. He accepts it as the price of power, and he accepts it without flinching. Pain is currency. You spend enough of it, and eventually you win. Blackbeard chose this fruit deliberately. He researched devil fruits, memorized their shapes and colors, and identified the dark fruit as the one he wanted above all others. He didn't stumble into this philosophy. He tracked it down across decades and killed for it. The fruit's secondary property is where the ideology becomes explicit. The dark fruit can nullify other devil fruit powers through physical contact. Touch someone and their uniqueness vanishes. Their power, the thing that made them exceptional, that they trained for, that defines them, is simply cancelled. This is Blackbeard's social philosophy made physical. In his worldview, there is no uniqueness that cannot be nullified. There is no innate power that cannot be stolen or suppressed. There is no dream so special that it sits beyond his reach. The fruit is a perfect metaphor for a man who does not believe in anything being inherently sacred. And now let's talk about the elephant in the room. The fact that Blackbeard can wield two devil fruits still remains as one of the series' great mechanical mysteries. Marco noted his weird body at Marineford, suggesting that Blackbeard's physiology itself is the anomaly. Theories also exist on how his devil fruit's absorption mechanic, allowing it to contain a second fruit, or the multiple souls theory suggesting multiple personalities or consciousnesses taking turns. His confirmed parentage as Zebek's son, combined with Saturn and Katarina Devon both noting his exceptional lineage, might suggest the answer lies somewhere in the Davy bloodline. There is significant structural evidence: his triple skull Jolly Roger, his 3 claw weapons, his 3 pistols, the way Luffy and Zoro referred to him as they, rather than he, in their first encounter at Jaya, that the symbolism of 3 runs through Blackbeard's entire design. Whether or not a third fruit is coming, Oda has been ringing the same bell since chapter 222. Blackbeard and Luffy are introduced in the same breath. The Jaya arc, chapter 222. They eat at the same bar. They talk about dreams. The atmosphere carries the weight of thematic introduction. And then Blackbeard says it. A man's dream will never die. It sounds like something Luffy would say. It is supposed to. Oda is baiting you. The difference is not in the words. It is in what backs them up. Luffy's dreams are centrifugal. They push outward. He wants to be Pirate King so he can have the most freedom. And freedom means everyone around him gets to be free too. He does not accumulate power to hold it. He defeats enemies and moves on. He rescues people and lets them go. He never claimed Robin. He freed her. He never claimed Nami. He drove Arlong out. His dream is fundamentally about presence without domination. An ever-expanding circle of people who get to live as themselves, because he refused to let the world cage them. Blackbeard's dreams are centripetal. They pull inward, like darkness. He does not want to be the freest man in the world. He wants to be the man who decides what freedom costs. His Jaya speech sounds liberating. A man's dream will never die. But the implications terrify once you understand who is speaking. The dream never dies because he controls which dreams live. His is not a liberation philosophy. It is a monopoly philosophy dressed in liberation language. The mirror even points towards their crews too. Luffy's crew wants to be there even when he fails them, even when he leads them off a cliff. Usopp left and came back. Robin stayed through imprisonment and terror. Nami joined before she trusted him and never stopped. The crew's loyalty has been tested at virtually every narrative peak and survived. Blackbeard's crew follows him because he succeeds, because he wins, because he delivers devil fruits and freedom from imprisonment and the thrill of domination. The moment the winning stops, there is no emotional bedrock. Marco observed the fundamental difference between how the two crews operate. Blackbeard himself on some level knows this, which is why he never stops winning, never stops escalating. His crew is held together by momentum. Luffy's is held together by love. Luffy takes the pain of his crew onto himself instinctively. His body bears the marks of every fight he walked into for someone else's sake. Blackbeard takes the pain of the world and adds it to his own power. Both of them absorb damage. Only one treats it as the point. When Ace died at Marineford, Luffy shattered. He stopped functioning. 2 years of trauma, reconstruction, and return. A narrative arc about grief so genuinely rendered that it remains one of the most emotionally affecting sequences in the series. When Whitebeard died, literally underneath Blackbeard's feet, after Blackbeard's crew had stabbed and beaten him, he then stole the Tremor fruit off his corpse, then announced to the world that a new era had begun. This literally all happened in the same event. Two men who both, in different ways, owed everything to Whitebeard's crew. Two opposite responses to the same death. That is the entire character parallel in one single arc. Oda did not write Blackbeard as Luffy's rival in the conventional sense. Not the way Zoro and Mihawk are rivals, or Roger and Garp. He wrote Blackbeard as the answer to a philosophical question. What does Luffy's philosophy produce if you remove the love? The ambition stays. The dream rhetoric stays. The refusal to bow to anyone stays. But everything warm is gone. What remains is Blackbeard. He is Luffy distilled through nihilism. The centrifugal force inverted into a black hole, the same starting shape with the warmth evacuated. This is why their eventual confrontation, when it comes, will not be a fight between a hero and a villain in the usual sense. It will be a question demanding an answer. Whose liberation is the right one? The clash between the yin and yang. Blackbeard is the son of Rox, the most powerful pirate in the generation before Roger, a man so threatening that the world government erased him from history. Rox's goal was not to become Pirate King, it was to become king of the world, to claim the throne that he believed his ancestor Davy D. Jones had once held and the world government had stolen. It was an ambition that directly challenged not just piracy's conventions, but the entire architecture of global power. This revelation changes everything about how Blackbeard's entire character arc reads. The generational structure of One Piece now runs with almost mathematical inevitability. Roger versus Rox, to Roger versus Whitebeard, which in turn became mutual inheritors of an era. Now Blackbeard versus Luffy. But the inherited will angle is more complex than simple bloodline rivalry. Luffy mirrors Roger through spiritual inheritance. Through the hat, Joy Boy's will, and the D passed through love and sacrifice, and the tears of people who never met but always understood each other. Blackbeard mirrors Zebek through biological inheritance and through a specific kind of grievance. Zebek died at God Valley when Blackbeard was approximately 2 years old. He grew up without his father, orphaned into a world that had officially decided his father never existed. He ended up on Whitebeard's crew, a man who had once sailed as one of Zebek's commanders, who had drank from the same cup of ambition before choosing a different path. Blackbeard watched Whitebeard build his empire of family. He understood from the inside exactly what it looked like when power was wielded with love, and he chose the opposite. The Rock's confirmation does not make Blackbeard more sympathetic. It makes him more inevitable. He did not choose this path purely out of greed. He was born into a lineage the world tried to eliminate, raised in its aftermath, growing up in the shadow of a man who is arguably one of the strongest to ever live. Zebek's crew represented the concentrated power of an era. The wonder is that Oda built toward this reveal so slowly, so carefully, across so many hundreds of chapters, that the confirmation felt like something the story had always known. This is the mark of retroactive inevitability. If you step back from the mythology and look purely at narrative architecture, Blackbeard's role in One Piece is something that almost no other character achieves across the entire series. He is both a thematic argument and a plot engine simultaneously, and neither function undermines the other. Let's walk through the domino chain, beat by beat, because it is genuinely one of the most impressive villain sequences in Shonen. Blackbeard kills Thatch, steals the dark fruit, and deserts Whitebeard's crew. He does not flee from Whitebeard, who could have destroyed him. He flees knowing that Ace, Whitebeard's 2nd Division commander, a man whose identity is entirely built around loyalty and retribution, will come after him personally. He chose the bait correctly because he understood the person he was baiting. He fights Ace on Banero Island and wins. But wins is inadequate framing. He wins what he actually needed. Ace as a prisoner, damaged enough to be handed over. Whether Blackbeard was capable of finishing Ace is almost beside the point. He didn't need to finish him. He needed to hold him. He delivers Ace to the Marines with the critical intelligence that Ace is Roger's son, knowing the world government will weaponize this as a public spectacle, knowing that Whitebeard will march to save his child, knowing that the spectacle of the execution will make retreat impossible for either side. He engineered conditions for the largest military confrontation in the modern era, and he didn't need to throw a single punch to start it. He uses the chaos of the Marineford mobilization as cover to infiltrate Impel Down, the world's most secure prison, and assembles the most dangerous criminals from Level 6, and escapes before the war's conclusion. He extracted his crew from the world's maximum security facility, while 2 armies were destroying each other on the other side of the ocean. He arrives at Marineford at precisely the moment both sides are exhausted, exactly when the timing benefits him most. He defeats a dying Whitebeard, then covers the corpse with a black cloth, and emerges having absorbed the Tremor fruit powers. Blackbeard never directly caused most of these events. He created conditions and then exploited them with perfect moral flexibility. A man with zero ego investment in how he wins, who therefore never misses an opportunity that more prideful men would decline. The Paramount War, the death of Ace, and the fall of Whitebeard's empire. Blackbeard's fingerprints are on all of it, and he barely had to fight. He spent most of the Marineford arc watching. This is the single sequence that distinguishes Blackbeard from the series' other great schemers. Doflamingo schemed, but his schemes required his personal involvement at the center. Crocodile engineered events, but his plan had him at its apex, the point where everything fed upward toward him. Blackbeard doesn't place himself at the apex of his plans. He places himself at the periphery, where the momentum carries him to the center without him having to announce himself. He talks down opponents before engaging them. He manipulates rather than confronting. He has cried and begged on panel, most notably during the Marineford sequence, where a mortally wounded Whitebeard had him by the face and was pumping a quake through his skull. He showed fear in ways that no conventional shonen villain would allow themselves to display. This makes him inconsistent, unimpressive, unworthy of being the final villain. Why does he act like this? I wouldn't say that this is a flaw in the writing. It is the writing. A conventional villain is brave, composed, and powerful in defeat. He announces himself. He gives the hero a fair fight. He loses honorably. He might even compliment the protagonist as he dies. This template exists because conventional villains have pride. They care about how they are perceived, what kind of legend they leave. Pride is a vulnerability. It commits you to behavior that a watching adversary can exploit. Blackbeard has no pride in how he wins. He has only interest in winning. His cowardice is not weakness. It is pure pragmatism stripped of ego. A man who will beg, retreat, manipulate, and wait is far harder to defeat than a man who fights on principle, because his decision tree has no branches labeled honor or dignity that a clever opponent can trigger. You cannot shame him into a fair fight. You cannot anger him into an unwise one. He acts only when the math favors him. He even articulated this worldview directly. Luck may decide who lives and who dies, but whoever gets scared first loses. Blackbeard is not performing bravery. He is calculating outcomes. Now step back and connect this to his devil fruit again. The darkness absorbs everything, including pain. Blackbeard the man absorbs humiliation, apparent defeat, the spectacle of being beaten and crying in public, and uses it all. Nothing is wasted. Nothing slides off. He is the void that turns everything thrown at it into fuel. The scene where Whitebeard humiliates Blackbeard doesn't diminish him. It demonstrates that he can absorb the most humiliating possible defeat, survive it, and 30 seconds later announce a new era to the assembled world. He also gave a young pre-Yonko Shanks a permanent scar, the 3-line mark across Shanks' eye that the narrative treats as a mark of genuine danger. Shanks already had this scar 14 years ago, in his mid-20s, before the Red Hair Pirates even formally existed, and managed to wound him in a way that never healed. So you would think that Teach is a coward who cannot fight, but that's not true. Teach is a man who fights exactly as much as he needs to. Most manga antagonists follow the same structural logic. Introduce the threat, then explain it. The villain appears, demonstrates power, and is retroactively deepened through flashback and motivation. Oda has used this template, but for Blackbeard, he did something far more ambitious and far more technically difficult. He seeded the threat before anyone understood there was a threat to seed. Blackbeard's first indirect appearance in One Piece is not the Jaya arc, it is Drum Island, where Wapol flees his kingdom because a pirate crew attacked it, and he was too frightened to stay. The pirate crew is the Blackbeard Pirates. The name is mentioned, only briefly. And then the story moves on to Chopper, and a mountain, and a man in a barrel. Most first-time readers process it as world-building texture. There are scary pirates in the Grand Line. This information will become relevant later. It becomes relevant in the most retroactively devastating way possible. By the time Blackbeard is established as a Yonko, as the man who triggered the Paramount War, as the man who killed Whitebeard and stole his fruit, a reader going back to the Drum Island arc experiences something close to horror at how early it started. He was already there. He was already moving, while Luffy was still collecting crewmates in the East Blue. Oda seeded Blackbeard's reputation before he seeded Blackbeard himself, which means by the time we meet him in Jaya, the audience has already absorbed that this is someone kings flee from. They just don't know yet how deep that rabbit hole goes. This is a technique borrowed more from literary fiction than from shonen manga. Mystery novelists do this. Plant the killer in the background of early scenes, visible but unrecognized, so the reread transforms the texture of the whole story. Oda applied it to his main antagonist across hundreds of chapters, trusting that readers who reached the end would go back and feel the dread retroactively amplify. One of Oda's golden rules, visible across his entire villain catalog, is that a great villain's ability must be a direct physical expression of their character philosophy. Crocodile's sand powers express arid nihilism and the desiccation of hope. Doflamingo's string manipulation expresses his belief that all people are puppets, and all relationships are control. Kaido's unkillable body expresses his total contempt for the idea that the world can produce something strong enough to end him. Blackbeard's devil fruit is the most philosophically complete expression of this rule in the entire series. This is Oda building a devil fruit that is simultaneously a weapon, a philosophical statement, a character summary, and a narrative thesis. The dark fruit is Blackbeard's worldview made tangible. Nothing is sacred. All uniqueness can be cancelled. Pain is fuel, and the void at the center of his character is not a wound to be healed, but a force to be weaponized. Oda never tells you that Blackbeard is Luffy's philosophical opposite. He shows you the same scene from two angles simultaneously. The Jaya bar sequence is one of the most technically precise pieces of character introduction in the manga, though the dialogue here is nothing spectacular. Where this sequence shines is through how each individual character is placed. Both crews order food. Luffy's crew and Blackbeard's crew, at the same establishment, in the same moment, select items that are exact inversions of each other. Luffy loves the pie and hates the drink. Blackbeard is the reverse. Oda is writing dichotomy through food preferences. Both groups are roughly the same size at this point. Both captains are eating with their crew. The visual rhyme is deliberate. Same frame, same setting, but mirror images. Blackbeard's speech about dreams. A man's dream will never die. Uses language and conviction that should sound like Luffy but doesn't. Something is slightly off. The same words, arranged to mean something different. Oda is building a linguistic uncanny valley. The villain who speaks the hero's language but means the opposite thing. The brilliance here is that Oda achieves the mirror effect without having the characters confront each other. They share a room, they eat food, a speech is given, and us readers who are paying attention has already received everything they need to understand that these two men are on a collision course with opposite philosophies. The reader who is not paying attention gets a colorful scene and moves on, and will eventually come to understand the weight and significance of this scene. Oda designed the scene to reward both readings. One of the most underrated aspects of Blackbeard's introduction is how funny he is in his first scene. He is loud, messy, enthusiastic about cherry pie, and philosophical in the way that a slightly drunk uncle at a family dinner is philosophical. He is not performing menace. He is performing warmth, which is, as we eventually understand, the deepest lie in the series. This is an enormously risky choice. Oda introduced his main antagonist as what looks like a comic presence, and trusted that the construction underneath would hold. He committed to the bit so completely that Blackbeard genuinely does feel like a minor character in his first arc, which means the revelation of his importance, when it comes, produces not just shock, but a specific queasy feeling. I missed it. That feeling is the point. Blackbeard's power in the story, and as a narrative device, operates through what you don't notice until it's too late. Now let's compare this to how other major antagonists are introduced. Kaido literally falls out of the sky onto a mountain and dents it. Big Mom's introduction is framed as an incoming storm. Each of these is powerful. None of them creates the specific dread that comes from retroactively realizing Blackbeard was sitting next to Luffy eating cherry pie while the story's endgame was already in motion. And the fact that we haven't gotten his full childhood flashback yet, while every other major antagonist has received one. We haven't seen Blackbeard's as of yet. He is, as of the final saga, the series' most consequential villain and its most opaque one. His actions are fully on the page. His philosophy is fully stated. His importance is undeniable. And Oda has shown us almost nothing of how he became this person. There is no specific moment in One Piece where it's openly stated that Blackbeard has become the final villain. There is no single chapter where Oda declares the threat level has changed. Instead, there is a relentless accumulation of correctly spaced escalations, each of which individually feels like a logical next step, and which collectively produce a character whose position at the endgame feels inevitable. Throughout this video, certain questions have surfaced and resurfaced, and they are worth naming as the structural threads they are. When Blackbeard says a man's dream will never die, but whose dreams? Who decides which ones survive? The answer is implicit in everything he does. He is the one that decides. He is not celebrating the universality of dreams. He is declaring himself their arbiter. The man who controls the concept of dream controls the world more completely than any government, because he controls aspiration itself. Why does Blackbeard command loyalty from people like Shiryu of the Rain, a man who killed prisoners for sport, or Katarina Devon, or Van Augur? Because he offers the one thing that monstrous people with monstrous power actually want, a world where the rules that constrain them no longer apply. Blackbeard's crew is not assembled around love or ideology. It is assembled around a shared investment in the destruction of the current system. He offers them the only thing better than freedom. Freedom plus impunity. At what point did Blackbeard stop being a mid-tier villain and become the final one? The answer here is Marineford, specifically the moment he stepped out from under the black cloth having stolen Whitebeard's power. He had two of the most powerful devil fruits in existence, a crew assembled from the world's worst people, a name that meant something, and more importantly, he had demonstrated that he would not stop, that there was no satisfaction point he would reach and call sufficient. He wants everything. He will never stop wanting. This is our final villain. There is a temptation, especially in long-running shonen, to measure the quality of a villain by how frightening they are, how powerful, and how dramatic their reveal is. By those metrics, Blackbeard is exceptional. The man who engineered a world war, stole two impossible powers, and rose from obscurity to Yonko with terrifying efficiency. He stands above most villains in modern shonen because he is philosophically necessary. The story could not make its central argument, could not prove that freedom with love is worth more than freedom without it, without a character who genuinely, coherently, completely embodies the alternative. Blackbeard's answer is conquest. He does not want to liberate anyone. He wants to own the concept, to be the man who decides whose dreams are worth having, whose freedom is worth protecting, whose life the current era can afford. In a sense, like the world government with better branding, a monopoly on aspiration wearing a Jolly Roger. The difference between Blackbeard and the current world government is not philosophical, it is aesthetic. The world government suppresses freedom through bureaucracy and a mythology of order. Blackbeard would suppress it through energy and a mythology of dreams. A world where one man's will defines what everyone else is permitted to want is identical to the world government. And here is what Oda understood that makes all of this work. A villain whose philosophy is indistinguishable from his protagonist's philosophy is a villain the audience cannot dismiss. Blackbeard is not the kind of evil you can point at and say, that is wrong, obviously. He speaks the language of liberation. He performs the aesthetics of freedom. He laughs the laugh of a man who believes in himself absolutely. The reader has to go deeper, has to understand the structure of what Blackbeard believes, not just the surface, to find the abyss underneath it. Oda made him funny, and loud, and weirdly charming. He made him eat cherry pie. He gave him a ridiculous laugh. He made him a big messy man who talks too much and feels too little. He made him, in other words, human enough to confuse you. Human enough that for 2 or 3 arcs, you weren't sure if he was a real threat or an interesting side character. And then very quietly, he revealed that this man had been engineering the deaths of people you loved since before you started watching. That is a mirror Oda held up to the dream of freedom and asked, what if the man holding it felt nothing? Marshall D. Teach is the most precisely constructed antagonist in One Piece because he is the exact shape of everything Luffy is not, built from the same materials, reaching for the same thing, hollow where Luffy is full. And Oda spent over 2 decades making sure the fit was perfect. The void that devours, the darkness that takes everything in and gives nothing back. The man who never sleeps, never rests, never laughs without calculating, never dreams without aiming to own the dreaming. Luffy's freedom creates worlds. Blackbeard's freedom swallows them.